I still remember the sound of rain against the hospital window the night Emily died. It was sudden, a brain aneurysm, they said. No warning signs, no goodbyes, just the mundane, "see you at dinner that morning," which became the last words we ever exchanged. 3 months later, I still wake up reaching for her side of the bed, my hand finding nothing but cold sheets. When Emily's father called me last week, his voice sounded hollow through the phone. Richard Harrison had always been a distant figure in our lives, a wealthy academic who spent more time traveling between obscure European archives than attending family gatherings. Emily used to joke that her childhood memories of him were mostly of his study door closing. "James," he said, "I need you to come to Oakwood," the family estate in rural Vermont that Emily had mentioned, but never visited during our 8 years of marriage. "There are matters to discuss regarding Emily's inheritance." I almost refused. What inheritance could possibly matter now? But something in his tone, a fragility I'd never heard before, made me agree. Perhaps grief had finally penetrated his scholarly armor. Or perhaps, like me, he just needed someone else who understood what it meant to lose her. The drive to Vermont took me through towns that grew progressively smaller, until finally I turned onto a gravel road that wound through dense forest. When the trees parted, Oakwood stood revealed, not the modest country home I'd imagined, but a sprawling Victorian mansion, its slate roof and weathered stone speaking of old money and older secrets. Richard met me at the door, looking smaller than I remembered. His tweed jacket hung loosely from shoulders that seemed to have collapsed inward. Behind wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes, so like Emily's, were bloodshot and distant. "You came," he said, as if surprised, then led me through a foyer where dust motes danced in slanting afternoon light. The interior was a museum of academic clutter, books piled on every surface, manuscripts in folders, maps curled at the edges. The air smelled of leather bindings and something else, a mustiness that hinted at spaces long undisturbed. "I never knew how to talk to her," Richard said abruptly as we entered what appeared to be a sitting room. "Even as a child. Her mind worked so differently from mine, but I always thought there would be time to figure it out." I nodded, understanding all too well the cruel illusion of unlimited tomorrows. "Emily never told you about her mother's family, did she?" Richard asked, pouring amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He handed me a glass without asking if I wanted one. "Only that they were estranged before she was born," I said. "She mentioned once that there had been some sort of falling out." Richard's laugh was brittle. "A falling out? That's generous. It was a severing, complete and final." He drank deeply. "The Blackwoods were collectors, James, for generations. Not art or antiquities, but knowledge. Specifically knowledge others wished to suppress." I shifted uncomfortably, wondering if grief had affected his mind. "I'm not sure I understand. Emily's grandfather built a library beneath this house. Not the conventional one upstairs, which is substantial enough, but a hidden collection. Books that disappeared from university archives, manuscripts thought destroyed in fires, journals never meant for public consumption." "And this relates to Emily how?" I asked, trying to keep impatience from my voice. "Because the library was her birthright, not mine. I married into the Blackwood family. When my wife died, the collection should have passed directly to Emily, but she was just a child. I became its caretaker until she came of age." His hands trembled slightly. "But then she went to college, met you, built her own life. I never found the right moment to tell her about her inheritance, about the responsibility it entailed." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small iron key, its design intricate and unusual. By Blackwood tradition, if the rightful heir dies without being told of their inheritance, it passes to their spouse. He placed the key in my palm, where it lay cold and unexpectedly heavy. "The library is yours now, James. God help you." I stared at him, waiting for further explanation, but he just drained his glass and stood. "It's late. We'll talk more tomorrow. I've had your room prepared upstairs." That night sleep eluded me. The old house creaked and whispered around me, and I could have sworn I heard footsteps in the hallway that stopped just outside my door. Twice I got up to check, finding nothing but shadows and moonlight slicing through tall windows. Near dawn, exhaustion finally pulled me under. I dreamed of Emily standing in a vast room filled with books, her finger pressed to her lips, warning me to be quiet. Behind her, something moved in the darkness between the shelves, something that shouldn't have been there. I woke with a start to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains, and the key still clutched in my hand, its edges having left an imprint on my palm. Something about it troubled me, beyond the strange circumstances of its inheritance. It wasn't until I was showering that I realized what it was. The intricate pattern on the key's bow. I had seen it before. In a sketch Emily had absently drawn one evening, while we talked about having children. When I'd asked about it, she'd looked startled, as if surprised to see what her own hand had created. "Just something from a dream," she'd said, and turned the paper over. But now I knew. It hadn't been just a dream. Somewhere in Emily's mind, some fragment of memory had retained the key to her family's secret, and now, for reasons I couldn't yet fathom, that secret had fallen to me. Breakfast with Richard was a silent affair. He seemed drained after our conversation the previous evening, pushing eggs around his plate without eating. Finally, he looked up, eyes clearer than they had been yesterday. "Are you ready to see it?" he asked. I nodded, though in truth I didn't know what I was agreeing to. The iron key lay heavy in my pocket, a weight that seemed disproportionate to its size. Richard led me through the house to what appeared to be his study. A spacious room lined with conventional bookshelves, a massive oak desk positioned before tall windows that overlooked overgrown gardens. He approached one shelf that seemed identical to the others and pulled a specific volume halfway out. I heard a soft click, and a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. "Old-fashioned, I know," Richard said, catching my expression. Theodora Blackwood, Emily's great-grandmother, had it designed this way in 1913. She had a theatrical streak. He reached inside the doorway and flipped a switch, illuminating the staircase with soft, amber light. "After you." The stairs spiraled downward, deeper than I'd expected. The air grew cooler, carrying that same musty scent I'd noticed in the main house, but stronger here, mixed with something else. A faint chemical odor that reminded me of the preservation labs I'd visited during a college tour of the Smithsonian. "The environmental controls are state-of-the-art," Richard said from behind me. "Temperature, humidity, even the composition of the air itself, all carefully maintained. Some of these documents are extremely fragile." Doot! The staircase ended in a small antechamber with a heavy wooden door. An intricate iron lockplate was set into the wood, the keyhole surrounded by the same pattern I'd seen on the key. "This is as far as I go," Richard said. "The library recognizes its keeper. It has been waiting for Emily since her mother died. Now it waits for you." I wanted to ask what he meant, how a room could recognize or wait for anyone, but something in his expression stopped me. For all his academic rationality, Richard Harrison truly believed what he was saying. "What exactly am I supposed to do down here?" I asked instead. Richard's smile was sad. "That's for you to discover. The Blackwoods have always believed that knowledge finds those who need it most." He stepped back. "I'll be upstairs if you need anything, though I doubt you will." Alone in the antechamber, I examined the lock more closely. The iron plate was intricately worked, with a design that reminded me of intertwined tree branches, or perhaps a complex root system. I inserted the key and turned it. The mechanism moved smoothly, as if recently oiled. The door swung inward without a sound, revealing the space beyond. My first impression was of vastness. The library was far larger than seemed possible, given the dimensions of the house above. Row upon row of bookshelves stretched away into soft-lit dimness, creating corridors and alcoves that hinted at an almost labyrinthine layout. The ceiling arched high overhead, supported by elegant iron columns, while the floor was polished stone, inlaid with what appeared to be astronomical symbols, but it was the books themselves that took my breath away. Shelves upon shelves of volumes of every size and binding, from massive tomes bound in leather to delicate manuscripts protected in glass cases. Some looked ancient, with cracked spines and faded gilt lettering, while others appeared surprisingly modern. I moved forward, drawn to the nearest shelf. The books were arranged not by author or title, but by some system I couldn't immediately discern. I pulled one volume out at random, a slim book bound in faded green leather. Opening it, I found pages covered in what appeared to be journal entries, handwritten in a precise script. April 18th, 1887. The indigenous people spoke of a cave system that changes its internal geography with the lunar cycle. Ridiculous superstition, Barton said, yet when we returned exactly 28 days later, the central chamber had indeed altered its dimensions considerably. I replaced the book and selected another, this one larger and more recent in appearance. The Bosworth Collection, documented instances of temporal anomalies in North American archaeological sites, 1956 to 1973. Flipping through its pages revealed photographs of excavation sites alongside detailed notes documenting inexplicable inconsistencies in carbon dating. A prickling sensation crawled up my spine. These weren't just any books. They were records of the unexplained, the anomalous, the deliberately forgotten, knowledge that challenged conventional understanding. I moved deeper into the library, pulled by curiosity. Near what I presumed was the center of the room stood a reading desk, illuminated by a soft pool of light. On its surface lay a leather-bound journal, open to a page marked with a satin ribbon. The handwriting was immediately painfully familiar, Emily's distinctive cursive. My heart pounded as I approached. Emily had been here? When? How was that possible? The date at the top of the page was just 2 weeks before her death. Found my way back to Oakwood today. The dreams have become too specific, too persistent to ignore. The key was exactly where my mind said it would be, inside the hollow of the oak tree that gave the estate its name. Strange how muscle memory works. I navigated the grounds as if I'd never left, though I have no conscious recollection of ever being here as a child. The library is everything I've been seeing in my dreams, yet more vast. I feel it responding to my presence, almost like recognition. Books seem to present themselves to me, volumes I need to see without knowing I need them. I haven't told James yet. How could I explain this place? But once I understand it better, I will. We'll come here together. I staggered back from the desk, mind reeling. Emily had been here secretly in the weeks before her death. She'd been planning to tell me, to share this incredible inheritance, but time had run out. Why had she kept it from me? We'd shared everything, or so I thought. The realization that she'd harbored this secret life, this connection to her family legacy that I knew nothing about, felt like losing her all over again. As I struggled to process this revelation, my eye caught something else on the reading desk, a small stack of books that hadn't been immediately visible. They were arranged in a specific order, with slips of paper marking pages. Had Emily left them this way? The topmost volume was titled Memento Mori, Documented Cases of Premonition of Death. My blood ran cold. I opened it to the marked page and began to read. In approximately 17% of documented cases, subjects reported experiencing unusually vivid dreams in the weeks preceding sudden death. These dreams frequently contained symbolic representations of places with ancestral significance. With trembling fingers, I moved to the next book in the stack, Blackwood Family History and Lineage. The marked page contained a handwritten note in the margin in handwriting I didn't recognize. The curse continues. Emily shows all the signs. Must find a way to break the pattern before it's too late. Curse? Pattern? I felt like I was assembling a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Whatever Emily had discovered here, had it somehow led to her death, or had she sensed her death approaching and come seeking answers? A soft noise behind me made me turn sharply. The library door stood open, just as I had left it, but for a moment I could have sworn I heard footsteps. A draft of air moved through the room, causing the pages of Emily's journal to flutter. I returned my attention to the desk and noticed something I had overlooked, a small envelope tucked beneath Emily's journal, with my name written on it in her handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing just a few lines. "James, if you're reading this, I've failed. The library is yours now. It will show you what you need to know. Trust it, even when the truth seems impossible. And whatever happens, don't let Richard convince you to close the sequence. It's the only way out. I'm sorry I kept this from you. I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. All my love, Emily." I stared at the note, baffled and increasingly uneasy. What sequence? What had Emily been trying to do here? And what did she need protection from? As these questions swirled in my mind, the library's lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. In that brief moment of darkness, I could have sworn I saw a figure standing between the shelves, a woman's silhouette, gone when the lights returned. My rational mind said it was a trick of shadows, but a deeper instinct, the same one that recognizes a familiar scent or the sound of a loved one's footsteps, whispered something else entirely. Emily. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the empty space between the shelves where I thought I'd seen Emily's silhouette. Minutes, maybe. The rational part of my brain insisted it was just a shadow, a trick of light combined with grief and the strangeness of my surroundings. But another part, a part I rarely listened to, whispered that there was more to it. I returned my attention to Emily's note. "Don't let Richard convince you to close the sequence." What did that mean? And why would Emily warn me about her own father? I needed answers, and Richard seemed the obvious source, yet Emily's warning gave me pause. Whatever was happening here, it was clear that Richard hadn't been entirely forthcoming. I decided to search the library further before confronting him. If Emily had been researching something specific, perhaps I could piece it together from the materials she'd been studying. The books she had marked formed a trail of breadcrumbs. Each one referenced a pattern in the Blackwood family: early, unexpected deaths spanning generations, often preceded by dreams or visions. Women in the family seemed particularly vulnerable, especially those who took an active interest in the library. One journal entry, written by Emily's grandmother in 1962, caught my attention. The pattern cannot be coincidence. Every keeper who has attempted to access the hidden collection has died within months of beginning the sequence. Yet the sequence itself seems to be the key to understanding what lies beyond the final door. It's a cruel paradox. The very knowledge that might free us from this curse is what triggers it. The final door? I looked around the vast library. There were several doors visible along the far wall, presumably leading to additional rooms or storage areas. Were one of these the final door she mentioned? As I moved deeper into the library, I noticed something odd. Certain books seemed to stand out, almost glowing in my peripheral vision, only to appear perfectly normal when viewed directly. Following this strange phenomenon led me down a particular aisle, to a section where the books were older, their bindings cracked and faded. One volume in particular drew my attention, a massive tome bound in black leather, its spine unmarked. When I tried to pull it from the shelf, it tilted forward but didn't come free. There was a mechanical click, and a section of shelving swung outward, revealing a hidden alcove beyond. Inside was a small desk and chair, illuminated by a single lamp. On the desk lay a leather-bound book, much newer than those on the surrounding shelves. Opening it revealed blank pages, hundreds of them, except for the very first page, which bore a single line in Emily's handwriting. The sequence begins with what we fear most. Below this cryptic statement was what appeared to be a riddle or poem. First comes the vision that cannot be shared, then truth from the past for which none were prepared. The third is a choice between silence and voice. The fourth is a gift that becomes sacrifice. Fifth stands the door that divides life from death. The last is the step taken after last breath. My hands trembled as I read the words. This was it, the sequence Emily had mentioned in her note. She had started it, and somehow it had led to her death. Or at least, that's what she had feared would happen. A noise from behind made me turn sharply. Richard stood in the entrance to the alcove, his face pale. "You found it," he said quietly. "I was afraid you might." "What is this?" I demanded, holding up the book. "What was Emily doing down here, and what is the sequence?" Richard sighed deeply, suddenly looking every one of his 70-plus years. "The Blackwood women have always been the true keepers of this library," he said. "The men in the family, those who married in like me, we're just caretakers. The real power, the real knowledge, passes through the female line." He gestured at the book in my hands. "That journal has appeared for each keeper when they were ready to attempt the sequence. No one knows where it comes from." "And what exactly is this sequence?" "A series of revelations," Richard said. "Steps to unlock something hidden even deeper than this library, something the first Blackwood found when she built this house in 1847. His voice lowered. "Something she should have left buried." "And this thing killed Emily?" My voice cracked on her name. Richard's expression grew troubled. "Not directly, no. But the women who attempt the sequence, their minds are open to things they were never meant to see. The human brain isn't designed to process certain kinds of knowledge. It breaks them, one way or another. You're saying my wife died of a brain aneurysm because of some mystical knowledge?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "I'm saying there are patterns in this family that defy conventional explanation," Richard replied evenly. "Emily found this room 2 weeks before she died. She began the sequence. And like her mother and her grandmother and every Blackwood woman who came before, she paid the price for her curiosity." He stepped forward, hand outstretched. "Give me the journal, James. Let me return it to its place and seal this room. You're not blood Blackwood. You might be spared if we end this now." I clutched the book tighter, remembering Emily's warning. "Don't let Richard convince you to close the sequence. It's the only way out." "Out of what?" I asked, more to myself than to Richard. "What?" "Emily's note said the sequence was the only way out." "Out of what?" Richard's face hardened. She was confused toward the end. The knowledge was already affecting her mind. But I didn't believe him. Something in his eyes, a flicker of fear, or was it guilt, told me he wasn't being truthful. "I think I'll keep this," I said, tucking the journal into my jacket. "Emily wanted me to have it." "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Richard warned, his voice rising. "This isn't just some family secret. It's a curse that has destroyed generations of Blackwood women. I won't let it take you too." "Take me where?" I challenged. "What really happens to them, Richard? Because I don't believe they just die. I think something else is going on, something you're not telling me." A look of resignation crossed his face. "You're cleverer than I gave you credit for," he said quietly. "No, they don't just die. They transition, move beyond. To where? I don't know. But they're lost to this world. And you've been preventing this. Why?" "Because someone has to maintain the library," he exclaimed, suddenly agitated. "If all the keepers leave, who will protect this knowledge? Who will ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands?" In that moment, I understood. Richard hadn't been protecting Emily or her ancestors from a curse. He had been keeping them bound to this place, preventing them from completing whatever journey the sequence was meant to facilitate. "Emily knew," I said softly, "before she died. She figured it out, didn't she? That's why she left me the note. She wanted me to finish what she started." Richard's shoulders sagged in defeat. "You'll be lost too," he whispered, "just like her." "Or maybe I'll find her," I countered, a strange hope blossoming in my chest. The rational part of my mind knew this was madness. People don't just disappear into other realms or dimensions. When someone dies, they're gone. And yet, I had seen something in the library, a silhouette, a presence. "Get out," Richard said suddenly, his voice cold. "Pack your things and leave Oakwood. The library is yours now. I can't change that, but I won't help you destroy yourself." He turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the hidden alcove with Emily's journal and a head full of impossible questions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the bed in my guest room, reading through the journal by lamplight. The pages that had been blank in the library now contained text, Emily's handwriting, appearing gradually as if written by an invisible hand. They detailed her experiences with the first steps of the sequence, the visions she'd experienced, the truths she'd uncovered about the Blackwood women before her. "They're not dead," she had written, "not in the way we understand death. They found a door to somewhere else. I can feel them sometimes, just beyond a veil I can't quite see through. Waiting." The rational, logical part of me wanted to dismiss all of this as the delusions of a woman suffering from the medical condition that would ultimately take her life. But another part, the part that had loved Emily, that had felt her presence in that library, wasn't so sure. As dawn broke, I made my decision. I would complete the sequence Emily had started, not because I believed in curses or other dimensions, but because it was the last thing she had asked of me. If nothing else, it would give me closure. I packed my bag and left a note for Richard, saying I was returning to the city. Instead, I hid my car in the woods and made my way back to the house through a side entrance Emily had mentioned in her journal. The hidden passageway led directly to the library, bypassing Richard's study entirely. The library seemed different in the early morning light, more alive somehow, as if it were waking with the sun. I made my way to the hidden alcove and sat at the small desk, Emily's journal open before me. "The sequence begins with what we fear most," I read aloud, tracing Emily's handwriting with my finger. What I feared most was simple: a life without her. I had already faced that fear every day since her death. As this thought crystallized in my mind, I felt a strange shift in the air around me. The pages of the journal began to turn on their own, stopping at a new entry I hadn't seen before. The first step is acknowledgement. To see the door, you must first accept the possibility of its existence. Below this was a detailed drawing of what appeared to be a door frame, intricate symbols carved into its stone lintel. I recognized it immediately. It matched a doorway at the far end of the library, one I had dismissed as leading to a storage room. Heart pounding, I made my way there. The door was simple oak, unremarkable except for the symbols carved above it, identical to those in Emily's drawing. I placed my hand on the knob and was startled to find it warm, almost like living flesh. I hesitated only briefly before turning it. If there was even the slightest chance that Emily was somehow waiting beyond, I had to know. The door opened not onto a storage room, but onto a staircase leading downward, deeper than the library itself should have allowed. The air that rushed up was not the musty scent of the library, but something fresher, like the moment before a summer storm. From below came a soft light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat, and with it, carried on the warm breeze, the faintest whisper of a voice I would know anywhere. "James." I took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway, closing it behind me. The journal I left on the floor of the library, its purpose fulfilled. Whoever came after us, if anyone did, would find their own path. As I descended the stairs, the light grew brighter, the air warmer, the voice clearer. I couldn't tell you what waited at the bottom, or what I found there. Those mysteries belong to the sequence, to the Blackwood legacy, to Emily and me. All I can say is this: don't mistake absence for death or separation for ending. There are more doors in this world than we can possibly imagine, and sometimes, if we're brave enough to turn the handle, we find that what we thought we had lost was merely waiting on the other side.